just to finish off the speaking session, Lindiwe Mazibuko.
Thank you very much. I'm a very traditional speaker. I like a podium, so I might hang out here. If I feel the warmth, I might venture towards the middle. You'll forgive me one way or the other, I hope. But thank you very much, John, for a very warm and kind introduction. I'm going to try and do a couple of things today. I'm going to tell you what I suspect many people are curious about, which is how I ended up getting into politics and why. I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I left, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I'm doing now in order to make sure that either I don't have to go back, or that when I do, I don't have to go back on my own. So, I left politics in 2014. I went to Harvard University to pursue a Master of Public Administration, but also to pursue a little bit of myself, to try and figure out whether politics was the right vehicle for me to do the things that I cared about. And the things I care about are to make South Africa a better place, especially for young women, for Black women, for the most marginalized people in South Africa, for poor people, and make it so that those dreams that our founding mothers and fathers in the early 1990s dreamt about, a society of equality and fairness, transparency, accountability, and all the things I think all of you in this dream about. So as I moved through my journey in politics, I started to wonder whether I was doing that stuff that mattered, or whether I was just surviving. So surviving the slings and arrows, surviving the internal warfare, the leaked emails, the scandal about this and that, all of which had really got nothing to do with the work that I had committed myself to when I entered politics at the age of about 27. And one of the things I thought about a lot when I was at Harvard, and Harvard's a great place to think. It's a real privilege to be in an institution like that where you get, whether you work there or whether you're a student there, you are encouraged to dive deep and think about yourself, your own experiences, and the issues that you care about. One of the things that fundamentally defined my experience at Harvard was the sense that in South Africa, we have this deep dependency on the idea of like a sole heroic political figure who will save our country from whatever traumatic or corrupt or dysfunctional political situation it finds itself in. I think a lot of that has its roots in the fact that we didn't take part in big parts of our transition. A lot of our transition was negotiated by big, wonderful, intelligent, forward-thinking men and women across the border without our knowledge. In fact, they came across the border and told us, guys, we've had a chat and we've decided we're going to sort this out for you. And so we're used to being rescued from the worst of our circumstances. I think part of it has to do with the fact that after 1994, we didn't have very strong civil society organizational instruments that encouraged us as ordinary citizens to participate in the process. But all of that has created in politicians and in people in our country this sense that the only way that we can survive as a country, or the only way that we can get ourselves out of the current mess we may or may not find ourselves in, is if some lone heroic figure comes riding in on a white horse to come and save us. And it's something I experienced when I came back from university. I'd arrive at the airport and complete strangers would stop me and I'd be so grateful they could still remember me. And they would say things like, when are you coming back to save us? And I bumped into Tulima Donsela at JFK in the United States. She's at Harvard right now as well. And young people would, swarm around her because we were all flying back to South Africa on the SAA direct flight to Johannesburg. And they would swarm her and say, oh, Advocate Madonsela, you're so amazing. When are you going to be our president and save our country? I had dinner with Makosi Koza a couple of weeks ago, and then I listened to an interview she did on 702 with Eusebius McKaiser, and a lot of people phoned in, and one by one they were asking her, oh, Makosi, when are you going to find your own political party and save us? We've got this obsession with politicians as these far-seeing, really powerful superhero-type figures, when really we're all just slightly damaged, a little bit narcissistic, very idealistic group of people who think that, the time has come for us to do something. And for whatever reasons, we step up and we try and make things happen. And with varying levels of success and failure, we come to be personified as either these heroic figures that have the power to make everything better in one fell swoop, or as these horrible villains acting alone who are taking the country apart piece by piece in order to feed. Anyway, it's a really quite juvenile way of looking at the way government and politics works in our country. And I one of the things I was inspired to do at Harvard is start writing about it. So I'm now writing a book. I've got a contract with a publisher who asks me every couple of months, where are the next few pages? And the book is called We Don't Need Another Hero. And it's about how we got ourselves where we are, what we can do to change it, and how we can bring a new generation of politicians, public servants, government actors into the fray in such a way that they feel empowered to be able to make our country great in the way that its founders intended it to be. A lot of the things I reflect on in my writing are about how I ended up in politics. And again, it's easy when you are a little bit narcissistic, slightly vain, as many politicians are, when people say to you, wow, you know, when are you coming back to save us? For you to start to drink that Kool-Aid and think of yourself as this heroic figure who came through politics, all the adversity and the difficulty, all alone, you know, just you. And forget that, in fact, it was a combination of circumstances, amazing people who mentored and supported you, and opportunities that brought you to where you are. So one of the things I tried to do in my writing is reflect on the extent to which, as much as I believe that saving South Africa or making our country better is going to depend on large numbers of committed South Africans working together, even my own career was a culmination of a combination of circumstances and mentorship, support, advice, and galvanization by groups of amazing, incredible, talented people who cared about the country as much as I did and who shared the same values as I did. When I start to look to the future, I think about the extent to which we are capable as South Africans of entrusting. When I think about the future, when I think about the future, and when I write about the future, I try to think about the ways in which we can galvanize large groups of young people, not depending on sole, solitary, individual heroic figures, but working together collaboratively, understanding that they all have talents and value to add to the system and to the process, how they can get together and pull together in the direction of making South Africa a better place, even as they may disagree politically or feel differently about the ways in which we have to get there. But understanding that they've been gifted with this incredible thing, which is a brand new democratic system, which we now have the privilege of building up from the ground and putting away a whole lot of the mistakes that were made in the past on our behalf or on behalf of others. And so I've spent a lot of time thinking about what we can do to inspire young people to believe that they're good enough to be out there on the stage participating in politics effectively. But of course, if you're a young person, you come out of university and you've got a family to look after. Many young Black South Africans pay what is known as a black tax. They have to look after their mother, their grandmother, their cousins who can't get a job, their nieces and nephews. It's not that simple to be able to take yourself out of what is a very private setting in which lots of people are dependent on you and throw yourself on politics, especially when politics has got such a damning reputation, corruption, maladministration, but also just like venality. People don't like the characters they see throwing punches at each other in parliament. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about how we can inspire young, talented people who are educated and passionate and interested in the future of the country to come together and do what they can in politics and in government to make it better. And I've come to the conclusion, like I did when I first entered politics, that the solution isn't going to come out of thin air by some magical conjuring, that I'm actually going to have to do some of the work myself. So in addition to writing about this, I've started a project to build a nonprofit whose purpose will be to source talented young South Africans and Africans who care deeply about the future of their country and of their continent, who want to get into politics, who may be interested in joining ZANU-PF or the MDC or the ANC or the DA or the EFF, doesn't matter, but who genuinely believe that the time has come for them to join the fray. And one of the things that inspired me to do this was spending a few years in the United States, where, just like in South Africa, they have a pretty shady president, a dodgy Congress, a suspect, most of the time, Senate, and a whole lot of faith lost in their own political system, which for them is a lot harder because they imagined it to be this inviolable thing that would last forever and ever. And in fact, from this simple, electoral victory of Donald Trump, they have learned how fragile it is and how much work has to go into making sure that democracy and all the values that they stand for, equality, fairness, and tolerance, are able to survive into the future. And I've noticed that even those young people who had every reason to believe politics was not their problem, it wasn't their job, they didn't have to worry about it, are capable of coming out in large numbers, running for office, and being as activist about their politics as many young African activists are too. So I've decided that the only way to find an outlet for young people who feel this way is to build an organization that'll give them a chance to find ways to run for office, find ways to serve in government, find ways to participate in the political process in a substantive way that will mean they don't feel this, belief. This belief doesn't continue in heroic saviors who are going to save South Africa. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. It's a challenging thing. One of the most challenging parts is telling young people after you've left office that it's a really great idea for them to go into office. So one of the questions I'm always having to answer is, if running for office and being part of the solution is so great, why aren't you doing it right now? And I've come to the conclusion that one of the things I don't want is the pressure that comes with this idea that you can fix these things on your own. I actually want to go back into public office with an army of talented, interesting, amazing young people. I don't care what political party or political formation they form part of, but feeling as though this is not a job that is being put at the doorstep of one individual person, and feeling that we are capable of and interested in and willing to change our country into a place where people are able to take collective responsibility for the future rather than waiting for individual heroic figures to save them. Thank you very much.